Another type of custom field that is extremely useful is the graphical indicator. And a graphical indicator does what it says on the tin. Effectively, it's a graphical indicator of some value. So it's not the actual value, it's not a calculation, it's giving you a symbol of some description that tells you where you're at. Let's create our own and see how it works in action. So we need to go to the Gantt chart tools format ribbon, custom fields, just as before. We need to decide what type of field we are looking for. Well, I'm looking for a duration field because I want to do a graphical indicator of the length of our tasks. So it's not going to be a straightforward typing field or a lookup or a formula. We need to come all the way down here to tell it we're not using data. We want to use a graphical indicator. Then I need to go into graphical indicators to tell it how to use those. So test for duration 1. We're checking to see if it's less than 1D for 1 day. Then I get to choose what graphical indicator represents a duration of less than 1 day. Let's go for the little orange circle. You can see there's quite a lot of choice in circles, flags, rectangles, plus symbols, minus symbols, diamonds, and then these half-filled circles, light bulbs, and smiley faces. So a duration of less than 1 day is going to produce an orange circle. A duration that is greater than or equal to 1 day is going to produce a green circle. So for the moment, we'll leave things at that. It's just 2 tests. Is the field that I'm checking less than a day long? Is the field that I'm checking greater than a day or equal to? So more than or equal to a day. Either way, we'll get an orangey or a green circle. That's okay. Before we proceed though, there are 2 other things we need to do. Firstly, we need to give this a name other than duration 1. So I'm going to call it duration test. Okay. And the second thing is to give the field a value. At the moment, it's just a free type field, so I would need to type in, but then I'd only see a graphical indicator, which makes the field a little bit complicated. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to make it equal to a formula. We get that same message we saw previously. Anything in the field will now be discarded. And the formula is that my duration field, so duration 1, is actually just going to be equal to the duration within the data. Okay. Okay. Syntax error. Okay, the syntax error is I've repeated the equals sign because the equals is already here, if you see what I mean. Duration test equals, and then I carry on with the rest of the equation. Okay, my new field, which is the duration, is actually going to be equal to the actual duration of a task. Instead of then displaying that duration, I've used the graphical indicators to give me an orange circle if it's less than a day, or a green circle if it's more than or equal to a day. Okay, okay. Then I need to make use of my new field. So let's insert it here at the beginning. Insert column. D will jump me down to the D's, duration 1. And there we have a set of orange and green circles. So the orange ones should be less than a day, 6 hours and 1 hour, they're less than a day. Green should be more than a day. If I change the physical duration, so perhaps removing the fridge takes 3 days, we see the graphical indicator responds. It's now green as opposed to orange. And my example was pretty basic. I only used 2 graphical indicators, but you could use a whole range to indicate where you're currently at in the process. I also used it for duration. So this value here exactly maps this value here, but we just see the graphical indicator. So if we go back to custom fields, choose the correct type, there's duration, I can go in and make further advances in the tests. So if it's greater than or equal to 1 day, if it's greater than or equal to 2 days, we'll have a different color and we'll even use a different shape. Let's flag that with an orange flag. So okay. So now anything over 2 days, for example, fixed new units, should have changed. The reason it hasn't is because of the order of the flags. Custom fields, remember when we did the bar styles, duration, the order that you place these criteria in matters. So as soon as it hits a matching criteria, so greater than or equal to 1 day, I'm a green circle, it doesn't check any more down the list. So in this case, I need to move, if it's greater than 2 days, higher up. So we move it up by doing a cut, moving to where we want to go, and paste. So now it'll check if you're greater than 2 days. Are you less than 1? Are you greater than 1? Okay. And now we get our little flags on anything that is greater or equal than 2 days. Just be a little bit careful with your graphical indicators that the criteria tests are in the correct order. In this case, unlike the bar styles, which use the last option it comes across, graphical indicators use the first one that matches the criteria. So as soon as we hit a criteria that meets our requirements, we don't check anymore down the list. So you've got to ask them in the right order. Otherwise, as we did there, the 2-day flag was not appearing because it was being met by the criteria for being greater than 1 day. As long as you bear those indicators in mind, the graphical indicator option really is quite clever. Now you'll notice, if we just move the box aside, the summary tasks do not use a graphical indicator. And that's very similar to when we did the formula before. We need to roll up. So to roll up, I want to use the formula. So when I say OK, formula is now in here. And you can see when I hover, it says 16.82 days. When I hover here, it says 9.63 days, but it's not showing a graphical indicator. So although I've asked it to roll the values up, so it makes a calculation and knows that phase 2 is 9.63 days, it doesn't show me the appropriate graphical indicator because in the settings, so duration, graphical indicators, I haven't told it what to do with the summary and the project summary. So in the summary rows inherit the criteria from non-summary rows. It's going to replace any criteria already there. There isn't any, so it's okay to say yes. What it's done is it uses the same criteria. So we'll get the same flags, the same circles, the same little flag. However, if you don't want it to inherit the non-summary rows, you can actually have your own criteria for the summary tasks. And if you're doing like we are here, checking the duration, it might be that instead of all the summary tasks being flags, because they're all longer than 2 days, you might put specific tests for the summaries. And the same for the project summary. I can make that inherit or again have its own. Well, that's inherit. Yes, to replace anything that's already there. Notice it's not editable because it's part of the non-summary rows. If I remove the tick, it then becomes editable and I can put my own in. Let's leave it inheriting. Okay, okay. And then I get little flags against the summary tasks. So it's custom fields. Make sure you set the correct data type. Make sure you set some kind of data. I've used a straightforward formula, and it doesn't need to be a straightforward formula as we've done here, where it's just equal the duration. So I can then do some graphical indicators. It could be a full-blown calculation of percentage of this or part of that, and then add your graphical indicators in. So the graphical indicators are ranges of values of that particular field that can then have symbols instead of the actual value.